Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to continue now with our next special speaker and researcher in the form of Hugh Newman, my special friend all the way from England. I first met Hugh when I went to my first UK expedition to share this information with the people in England, not knowing what I was going into, and to a place and an event called Stars and Stones. The organizer of that, John, is here as well. And there I met this guy called Hugh Newman, who did such an amazing presentation about the ancient civilizations of the Americas that just completely blew my mind. And we immediately struck up a great relationship, after which I realized that Hugh runs his own little special show called Megalithomania. Lo and behold, not long after that, I went off to England and again and to Glastonbury, and my first experience at Megalithomania there. And that resulted in the reason why you're all here today. So it gives me a special, warm, fuzzy feeling to introduce Hugh Newman to you, who I believe is going to blow you away. Hugh Newman is an Earth mysteries researcher. He travels the world in search of megaliths, lost civilization, and ancient knowledge. He's currently writing about the pre-Mayan and Olmec civilizations of Central America. He traveled there twice in 2003 and 2010 to explore the Olmec civilizations, the Zapotec, and other cultures in search of an ancient megalithic civilization that flourished in this part of the world that now has been almost totally forgotten. As well as being the organizer of Megalithomania conferences, he hosts the Avalon Rising Earth Mysteries show on glastonburyradio.com. So put a warm welcome for Hugh Newman, please.
Thank you very much, Michael. That was a rousing introduction. I'm quite astonished. Thank you. Blimey. So thank you for being here for my talk. I know it's nearly lunchtime. We're going to be looking at the civilizations that existed in Mexico and Central America before the Maya. Most of you will be aware of the Mayan civilization because of the famous 2012 calendar and the pyramids and other sites there. But there's a whole other world to look at there that goes way back before the Mayans even existed. And there's even evidence now that the Olmecs and the Zapotec and other unknown cultures that stretch back into prehistory were the original mother civilization of that part of the world, and not only invented the Mayan calendar, or the long count calendar, which ends in December 2012, but also taught about the arts of constructing megalithic temples and pyramids and other such sites. This is just some of the subjects we're going to go through today. There's some really strange things when the more and more you look into ancient Mexico and Guatemala. For example, there's pyramids that are said to be over 7,000 years old, and that's been because of the lava that was tested, that was formed upon it. There's lots of connections with South America and Viracocha, and there's the whole Quetzelcoatl myths and legends, which suggest a great maritime civilization ended up in Mesoamerica. And we have to ask where the Olmecs came from, because as you'll see as we go through the talk, you'll realize they certainly weren't from Mexico or Central America. And also you have the famous crystal skulls that appeared in Belize, and also other ones at Monte Alban, which have a potential Olmec site. And also we're going to discuss the implications of the origins of the Mayan or the long count calendar that ends in December 2012. So here's just some images of what we know about the Maya. So in Lord Pakal is the figure in the center there. On the top right, you've got the Aztec sunstone, who were much later culture. And it just shows you some other codexes and other such temples that the Maya were involved with. This shows you a basic map of Central America where these civilizations flourished. The Olmec heartland in the center of that map is where I'm going to be focusing my research today. But as we go on, we'll realize that the oldest civilization of that part of the world was actually spreading out throughout that whole part of Central America. And we'll look at evidence of that as we go through the talk. This is a close-up of the Olmec heartland along the Gulf Coast. And you can see many sites there. The large yellow dots, Quetzelcoatl, San Lorenzo, and La Venta in particular, are the sites we're going to have a look at today. But there's many other finds that have been discovered and artifacts at many of the other sites listed here. The only site you can really visit that's actually got a pyramid and other such things and earthworks on site is La Venta, and even that's extremely hard to get to. You really have to be a hardened megalithomaniac to visit these sites. But I started up in Jalapa, which is slightly north of Veracruz, to go and look at the great museum there. And there's some incredible stonework and the famous Olmec heads. And here's just some examples, just to give us a taste of what we're into. And many of these weigh between 15 and 40 tons each. They're made of volcanic basalt and other types of rock from the Quetzalcoatl Mountains. And most of the ones we're going to see in the next couple of images are from San Lorenzo or La Venta. Most of them were focused around San Lorenzo, which is said to be the oldest Olmec site in that part of the world. But you can see the immediately negroid features and the strange leather, possibly leather caps that they're wearing. Some people suggest they may be mining helmets. Zachariah Sitchin and others have pointed that out. And here's some other ones here. You can see just the sheer magnitude of these and the intricate carving, which one expert who appeared on BBC TV to try and unlock the mysteries of the Olmecs claimed that the stonework was so sophisticated, it was almost, if not beyond, the level of the high-level carvings in ancient Egypt. And he actually went there, this professor, and worked with this stone. I found it almost impossible to carve with what the ancients would have carved with. So we're looking at a highly sophisticated civilization. And the dating really starts around 2000 BC with the first evidence. But there's evidence now that goes even further back to 2260 BC and 2500 BC. And we'll have a look at these artifacts that back up these dates shortly. But the general consensus is that the Olmecs began around 1800 BC and were flourishing around 1500 to 1200 BC. And you can see the strange braids on the back, on the right-hand picture there, on the back of their helmets or the caps that they're wearing. And also you'll notice the bits that are being cut out or chipped out on the left-hand one. And many of these Olmec heads, the great colossal heads, were deliberately destroyed by the last part of the Olmec culture around 200 BC to 200 AD. Here are some other examples, mainly from San Lorenzo. The one on the right is the only one that's smiling out of all 17 heads that have been discovered. These are all the heads that have been discovered, the colossal heads so far. But there's others. When I went into southern Guatemala, I found evidence of 4 or 5 other colossal heads, which are proto-Olmec culture, slightly later, possibly 500 BC to 100 BC. We'll have a look at them as we go through the talk. But while we're in Jalapa Museum, we should have a look at some of the stonework we're dealing with here. You can see the intricacy of the carving on the left, for instance, and this strange position that many of the statues sit in, which is the same as you get in Pacific cultures, even Buddhist and Far Eastern cultures, but also cultures in South America and virtually all around the world. There's this strange seated position, which we'll notice that as we go through the talk. There's many statues that mark that. And on the right-hand side, on the bottom there, you've got what looks like an altar. They've been called altars, and with a priest or a shaman emerging from it. And there's lots of connotations of what this could mean. But we'll have a look at some theories as we travel around some of the Olmec sites. One of the things that interested me and follows on from what Wayne was talking about is these stretched skulls or elongated skulls. And the one on the right there, the main picture, is the long skull, which is actually in Jalapa Museum and is one of the only surviving skeletons from the Gulf Coast or Olmec region, where they've obviously either it's natural, which is probably slightly unlikely, but they actually had where they used to, when they were babies, they actually crushed the head with bits of wood and string so it would grow longer, and it was possibly part of the priestly elite who are involved in that area. But this is where we start to find the similarities with South America and the pre-Incan culture with the legends of Viracocha. On the bottom left there, you'll see another stretched skull. That's actually from the Nazca Museum in Peru, where all the famous Nazca lines are from. And so we'll notice this as we go along. On the top left there, you've got this incredibly sophisticated carved turtle, which I just wanted to put in there because it was a fascinating piece of stonework and caught my attention. And it's one thing you notice when you go to Jalapa Museum, if you're going to go and look, you want to go and look at the Olmec societies of ancient Mexico, you really must go to Jalapa Museum, north of Veracruz. It's one of the most important places.